California's Democratic Party convention is in full swing in San Francisco. More than half of the party's presidential candidates are there. The most notable name not in attendance, former Vice President Joe Biden. California is the country's largest reliably blue state. It's also become more influential this election cycle. The state's primary has been moved from June to March 2020. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now from San Francisco. So, Ed, we've got 15 Democratic candidates gathering in San Francisco this weekend. What makes California so important for the Democratic nomination?
You've got 495 delegates at stake here in Reno on your way to winning the nomination, and like every other state, they divide them up proportionally by congressional districts. So given its size, and given that it's being held on Super Tuesday, its primary, there's a chance here for maybe 2, 3, maybe even as many as 4, depending on how the contest is going, candidates to collect enough delegates here and continue on. California usually holds its primary in June at the end of the primary process. The state has decided they're sick and tired of just being an ATM for campaigns. They actually want to have a say in the process. And so that's why more than half of the field is here in San Francisco this weekend, as opposed to spending time in places they would normally be spending the summer before an election here. Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, the 4 early states, because they understand not only is there a chance to raise money out here, but they need to find votes and support in order to remain viable beyond the first few weeks of the campaign next year.
And how do you think moving up the primary in California will affect the Democratic nomination? Do you think it'll have a huge impact?
It will. The fact that they're here at all right now is a vivid demonstration of that. Normally this is a place where candidates come to for maybe a day, day and a half to raise money, collect as many big checks as they can from either Silicon Valley or down in Hollywood, maybe in the San Diego area, and then they get out and they don't necessarily do anything else here. Well, now they have to campaign, and they are building operations here. It is something that is stretching some of these campaigns, especially the ones that aren't as well known, quite thin, because they have to raise money in order to play here in hopes of raising more money and finding support. It's keeping them away from organizing in some of the earlier states like Iowa or New Hampshire, where early momentum can really help drive you into the later parts of the primary season. So it's giving the state, best known as the birthplace or the home of the resistance, as some people call it, the liberal resistance, far more of a say in the actual process of picking a Democratic nominee. It's something that thrills people here, and I think is scary, frankly, for a lot of these campaigns, because it's never been done before, and it changes the calculation of how somebody ultimately becomes the party's nominee. And you talk to people here, as we have over the last day and a half or so, they say, we want to hear about the same things they do in Iowa: education, the economy, health care, taxes, immigration. But one issue out here, Rena, that we don't hear about in places like South Carolina and New Hampshire, the other early states: housing, housing affordability, the lack of affordable housing, and homelessness, especially in this city, which has an incredibly large and vividly present homeless population. There's a lot of concern about how the tech boom has really made this part of California an unaffordable area for working class families. So it's something that if a candidate really wants to connect with Californians, they're going to have to talk about.
And, I've got to ask you, why is it that Joe Biden seems to be really dancing to his own tune? You've got all these other Democratic nominees there in California. Memorial Day weekend, he kind of did his own thing in Ohio on Memorial Day. Why is it that he's really having a different strategy than the rest?
Yeah, he was in his home state of Delaware on Memorial Day, for a Memorial Day event this past Thursday when many others were elsewhere. He's in Ohio tonight for a speech on gay rights and his gay rights platform, a reminder to the party that he, of course, was openly for same-sex marriage before even President Obama, something that he gets a lot of credit for. Look, he can afford to dance to his own drum and keep his own schedule compared to the rest of the field because he has such a commanding lead. He has it here in California. He has it in the other primary states, early primary states. He has it in hypothetical matchups with the president. Double-digit leads. A lot of the other campaigns scratching their heads wondering why that is. And so I know now, having talked to some folks over the last 2 days, there was some rigorous debate in Biden's camp about whether he should be here this weekend. They ultimately decided he didn't need to be yet, but they promise he will be. We know, for one thing, he'll be here raising money in late June, right before the end of the quarter, but also is planning a rigorous campaign schedule.
We know that a number of top Democratic contenders spoke this morning, Saturday morning, at a breakfast hosted by the Service Employees International Union. What were really the big takeaways that the Democrats there were trying to appeal to this particular group?
Well, remember, labor unions, of course, have an outsized role in the organizing aspects of any political campaign, because they can provide foot soldiers, door knockers, people to make phone calls on behalf of a campaign. So it was for a group of people who are sort of labor union captains across the state of California, exactly the kind of people who can go home to Fresno or Eureka or Los Angeles County and tell fellow union members, hey, I saw Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Beto O'Rourke, Bernie Sanders speak. You should check them out. We should go work for them. So a real opportunity for them to touch a lot of different people who can go home to their communities across the state and help make the case on their behalf. California's a big state. They don't do politics here like they do in other parts of the country. A lot of it's driven by television, both television advertising and being on the news, simply because it's impossible to shake the tens of millions of hands in this state, unlike Iowa or New Hampshire, where they expect to meet the candidate 3 or 4 times before making a decision.
Fascinating look at California politics. I want to thank you very much, Ed O'Keefe in San Francisco.